サイクリングホビーマシン DC エンジン NEC から発信。
With the recent news that a lot of the next-gen consoles might indefinitely be delayed until 2021, I kind of decided to make a video. And the video sparked interest way before the consoles got delayed. I just feel like this is one of those perfect times to make this video, as you can tell by the title. So I noticed that I've been looking back at some of the consoles that I've just kind of either wrote off or I've been too young to really pay attention to the gaming market. And recently, probably about a week, maybe a month, I was looking into the Nintendo Switch, and everybody around me is playing them, everybody around me is buying more games for them, and nowadays, some of the games have actually piqued my interest. When it first came out, I had no interest in playing the console whatsoever, and I started to notice that some of the games that I do have an interest in are starting to come up, are starting to show itself on the Nintendo Switch. The only issue that I'm running into with the Nintendo Switch is a lot of the games that I am interested in, which are, first-person dungeon crawlers, anime RPGs, that kind of thing, I can also get them on the PS4, which I already have. So that's the dilemma that I've run into. I'm not really into the first-party stuff of that Nintendo has to offer, and I think it just really has something to do with it could be my age, or I'm just not into it. It doesn't cater to me. They don't grab my attention as much. The new Mario Odyssey, I did see it. It does look interesting, but it's not interesting enough to make me want to buy the Nintendo Switch. I haven't come across that game yet. And I feel that it is on the horizon that I will come across that game. That will, influence me to want to, throw down some money and buy a Nintendo Switch. It just hasn't happened yet, but I can feel it. It's there. It's coming. Recently, I was doing some, I wouldn't say research, but I was window shopping. I was doing some window shopping. And I was looking for the Nintendo Switch, and I come across the TurboGrafx Mini. Come across that. Now, when I was a kid, I never knew that the Nintendo Graphics 16, not Nintendo Graphics, I mean the TurboGrafx 16 was a thing. I didn't know it existed, because when I was growing up, I think by the time that console came out, I was probably about maybe 6, maybe 5 years old. I was a Nintendo kid. I was a Nintendo kid all around, until about, I would say, maybe the early mid 90s, when I got my hands on a Sega Genesis and I played Streets of Rage for the first time. Streets of Rage kind of geared me into the direction that I enjoy now, which is, kind of that adult-themed game that has, fighting, that has, streets types of things, like a city kind of vibe, and Sega Genesis did that. But I was still a Nintendo kid, because I felt like they had better games when it came to things like Mega Man, Final Fight, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, games like that. I was really into those. Now, by my understanding, the TurboGrafx 16 came out in 1988, I think? 1988, 1987. But it was called the PC Engine in Japan. Now, when we got the TurboGrafx, it failed here, and that's probably one of the reasons why I never knew it existed. Which kind of piqued my interest because I saw the TurboGrafx Mini and I was kind of like, all right, I never knew about the TurboGrafx Mini. I remember a couple of years ago, my friend showed me a game on the PC Engine called Gate of Thunder, and I didn't care at the time. I was so into PlayStation 3, I was so into the Xbox 360 at the time, and I was playing a lot of what was the game I was playing? I was on my Shin Megami Tensei kick. I was really into playing just only Shin Megami Tensei, and I didn't care about the PC Engine until just recently. I got wind of some of the games that are coming on the TurboGrafx Mini. The TurboGrafx Mini looks like it has a pretty good lineup right now. The only issue that I have with the lineup as of now is that a lot of the games are duplicates, but in Japanese versions of the game, and they don't change very much. But to my surprise, there is going to be Splatterhouse on the TurboGrafx Mini, and there is going to be another game that I'm pretty interested in called Sapphire. It has a longer name. It's in Japanese. I don't remember, but everybody just calls it Sapphire. It is a shooter, vertical shooter. You know, I like those bullet hell games, and I'm really into them. But the TurboGrafx Mini really piqued my, I guess, curiosity to look more into the PC Engine. So recently, I did a lot of research, did a ton of searching around and here and there, talking to friends here and there, and searching around, and I finally managed to get my hands on TurboGrafx the PC Engine Duo R. Got my hands on one of those, and I gotta say, the PC Engine Turbo Duo R is a really neat, interesting, like, you know, technology of the past. And I've been playing. I picked up a couple of games. It's not that those games. A lot of those games are really hard to find. So I opted for the PC Engine version, not the TurboGrafx version. The TurboGrafx version is the US release, and the PC Engine is a Japanese release. And a lot of the English releases are really expensive. They're really hard to come across unless you're well off or you have, disposable income. So I opted for the PC Engine, and I bought I wouldn't say a ton, a reasonable amount of PC Engine games to keep me busy. And I'm thoroughly impressed with the console, and the console is old, it's outdated, but it still brings a healthy dose of just pure nostalgia and fun. I know a lot of people younger probably would not appreciate it because it's 1980s, it's early 90s stuff. So for me, it's nostalgic because in terms of graphical fidelity, it just, tugs on those nostalgia strings really hard. And but I know that someone of today's caliber of gaming would never appreciate it. They'll just find it outdated and dull. But I have played a reasonable amount of PC Engine games that I purchased. I got my hands on a copy of Super Star Fighter, which is a vertical shooter. Pretty. I wouldn't say it's fantastic. It's a good game. It's fun. It's easy to get into. Anybody can play it. But it does what it's supposed to do. It's like you pop in, you play for maybe 30 to an hour or so, 30 minutes to an hour, and you just have fun with it. It's a fun game. But the two games that really caught my attention that I have are a game called Renny Blaster and a game called Conan the Boy in the Future. I think it's pronounced Boy or Future Boy. Renny Blaster is kind of like a 2D side-scrolling action fight beat-em-up game. It's really graphically beautiful, like in terms of 16-bit graphics. It looks just great. It plays a bit stiff, but there's a lot of options in the game because you have two characters to select from. One is like a fighter with special moves, and the other one is a kind of like a wizard in a trench coat. I can't even I can't think of what he is, but that's like the best idea I can give you. He does a lot of magic based attacks, and it's just this really interesting kind of game. One thing that I can kind of think of what it kind of feels like to me whenever I play it is like a really balanced 2D version of maybe Bad Dudes, or it kind of feels like sometimes I'm watching a 2D version of a Jackie Chan movie when I'm playing it, which is kind of interesting. And the other game, which is what did I say? Conan, which is like a 2D platformer with a really in-depth story that I can't follow because the game is in Japanese. But you can kind of piece things together, you know, just by visual cues and when people are talking to each other. I know there's a damsel in distress kind of thing going on where you have to save this little girl, and you play as this little boy, and there's like this opposition force that wants to attack you, and it's a really kind of interesting game that you could piece together. It's a platformer, and it's really good. But I'm happy that I got into the PC Engine now, and not when it's like years later when, you know, I don't care, or whenever, you know, stuff like that. But I have to say, it's interesting that when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about the TurboGrafx. I didn't know anything about the PC Engine because I was too young at the time. I was a Nintendo kid, and I wasn't really reading GamePro until maybe about 11, 12, and that was way into when the PlayStation 1 was coming out, Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis were rotating out, you know, that kind of thing. It was like the end of a generation. So, but with that being said, I just wanted to ask you guys, was there ever a time when you really wanted to look at systems that you left behind in the past and never had a chance to enjoy?